Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's New at Hāpara with our product update webinar. My name is Heather Rentz, and I'm your host today. I am the Community Development Manager at Hāpara. You may have seen my face before, maybe you haven't. I'm joining you live from Alberta, Canada, and I have with me two people that are from New Zealand. And in the background, we have our US team that is helping monitoring the chat if you have any questions. So with us, we have Nara, our VP of Product and Engineering, and Logan Duncan, the product owner. And what they're going to do is they're going to share the latest innovations and updates in Hāpara. First, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell a little bit more about what they do. And Nara, I'm going to start with you, please.
All right. Thanks, Heather. Really excited to be in the webinar today. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Very keen to take part in this webinar today. I'm based out of Auckland, New Zealand. My name is Nara Chilluvuri, and I've been with Hāpara since 2015, actually. And I've been in product development for over 2.5 decades, so that tells my age. I got into Hāpara and education as my kids were going through the school system, and I was starting to wonder about how digital learning and so on is concerned, and I'm really glad I got into it. It's been a privilege to work with a number of teachers and educators all around the world as we develop our products to learn about the concerns and how we can assist in the classrooms and so on. We're always keen to listen and do our best to make sure that you have more instructional time with your students in classroom. That's what drives us. I'm going to pass on to Logan, who's also here based in Auckland. Logan?
Hello. I'm Logan Duncan, product owner for Hāpara. I've been here for two and a half years now. I joined as a product designer as well. So I've started in the design space and moved over into product ownership. So yeah, I'm a whole lot less professional than both you, Heather, and Nara. So thank you for the intro, Heather. But yeah, I've been enjoying it a lot so far, and getting all the feedback from the teachers and internal teams, and trying to make this product better for everyone.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. We're going to get started with just asking you some informal questions. And if anyone wants to jump in with more of a clarification, please feel free. But I have a question for you, and that is, can you give us an overview of the latest product updates and what motivated these changes?
Yeah, sure. Definitely, Heather. So firstly, thanks for inviting us to this webinar and giving us a chance to talk to our users, our audience, and explain how we do things here and what drives us and so on. So both Logan and I, while this is one of the first... Gosh, I got some feedback there. Yep. While this is one of the first webinars where we're talking directly to our audience, we're super excited to be here and hope to be able to answer your questions. In terms of Hāpara itself, I just want to talk briefly about the foundational story, because I think that matters for what we do and why we do things the way we do it. So for many of you who might be aware, Hāpara started off in New Zealand way back formally in 2012, but it came out of a research project that was being done by one of the school clusters here in Auckland, which was mainly serving learners from low socioeconomic background. And it's called the Manaikalani Trust. And what they did is they had a hypothesis, because their students were a little bit behind in learning compared to national averages, that digital devices could actually bridge the gap because they didn't have the same set of resources. And boy, were they right. As they introduced Google Apps and laptops into the classrooms, they saw somewhere between 2 times to a 6 times improvement in learning outcomes for those students. And the gap between students from low socioeconomic backgrounds and the national average reduced dramatically. Everyone was surprised, and that's where, from that research work, is where Hāpara started. One of our key stories there was about making learning visible, and that's still true to us today, as it was from our start. And so once we found the impact that this happens, and much of this visible learning comes out of John Hattie's research, we started looking at what that means with classroom interactions, When we started off in 2012, it was quite a simple platform. We had teacher dashboard and we had highlights. But as the world has evolved and more apps and others have come into the ecosystem, we have focused on classroom management as the core area that underpins everything we do. That's where we get the most feedback and the most attention in our platform. We obviously have also workspace that is more for lesson planning, project-based learning, all kinds of things. It's a flexible learning platform. And we take feedback on how to improve those as well. So Hāpara, we look at it as a holistic platform, but you can use bits and pieces of it as you want. The teacher dashboard allows you to organize your classrooms. Highlights allows you to see what students are doing right now in the moment and redirect them when they may be off task or where you want them to head to some part for the learning, and workspaces where the learning and interactions happen as such. So we continue to focus on these classroom interactions with the key goal to always enrich classroom interactions and make the teacher-student outcomes better. And much of what we do from how we approach product updates and so on is to look at what we can do to reduce the technology complexity in a classroom and free up teachers sitting in front of the devices so that they can actually spend time with students. So looking at all that and coming to the present and where we are today, you would have seen that over the last couple of years, while we might have been you might not have seen too much change. There's been a lot of work happening in the background, primarily to set up since we sit on top of the Google ecosystem, we have to adopt any changes that are brought in, like security and privacy. And over the last couple of years, particularly after COVID, there's been a high focus on privacy and security on the platforms. Google itself has done a bunch of changes, and we have been adapting our platform to align with the Google enforced changes and so on. So, but more recently this year, you would have seen that we started introducing more changes into the platform itself. If you look at highlights, for example, and for what we've done for teachers, we've introduced functionality such as the close and block. It's a small example of where we feel we can stop teachers from having to stay in front of devices and close and block. So, you can't always look at all the new apps that are coming up or the web pages that are distracting. But now, if a teacher sees something that's distracting, they can just with one click, they can close and block it and carry on with the lessons. And for the rest of that lesson that day, students will not be able to open that particular website or page. So things like that. We also started making improvements to the the usability layer of the platform as such. So we're introducing something called the class view page. And what we're doing there is trying to bring much of the functionality, which has been historically spread out over various areas of the application. We want to bring them together so that a teacher does not have to go from one area to another in order to access all the functionality. You will see us doing more and more of these changes in the coming months, and we'll introduce them gradually and take your feedback and then refine them so that it works best for you. So we always welcome feedback, and we hope that we keep getting lots of inputs from you. On the other side, and then I'll, this is the last bit I want to talk about for this question about how we approach products. We also look at the others who play the greater part. There are teachers and students, there are administrators and system administrators and so on in the background who make everything function. So over the years, our Hāpara admin console was, admittedly, it had got dated, and some functionalities again were spread all over the place. So you'll notice that last year we invested quite a bit into that tool to completely redesign it, and it gives you a preview of where we're planning to take our main platform as well in future. We want to optimize the workflows and optimize where we place things so that it's more intuitive and you can quickly see what's going on. So you'll be seeing more and more of these changes, and our approach ultimately always comes to the feedback we get from the people, where we see them using the tools, and what we think we need to refine to give, enrich those classroom interactions. That is our driving principle. Yeah. I hope that answers the question, Heather.
It does. Thank you. And it leads right into my next question. And that is, what kind of feedback from users influence these recent changes?
Well, actually, all feedback influences the changes that we make as well. So just want to give a little bit of context around the different kinds of feedback tools that we have first. So we have the little feedback footer in the teacher-facing app all over the product. So any page that they want to type something in, it will get sent to the product team. We read all the feedback that we collect, and we take that feedback and we prioritize it in terms of first we create different themes on all the different feedback that we're getting, and then we organize that into the quantity as well of the amount of requests that we're getting. We have the support team who let us know from their end if there is anything from the users coming through that they think that needs to be looked at. And also we're exploring with different ways when we're releasing new features now as well, where we're giving the option for users to provide feedback on that new feature too. So it all gets read, and we do encourage as much as possible to come through, because if you guys aren't telling us the problems, then we can't work to solve them either. So even just anything you guys can think of, just send our way, and we will go through it, and we will prioritize the different things that we're building based on what you guys are wanting in your classroom. So how does this influence changes? For example, the recent guide browsing enhancements that we've been doing. Sorry, I may have just jumped into that. With the highlights enhancements that we're making in the Class U page specifically, we have a whole area in there called guide browsing. And this is where teachers can set up their different lessons, so they can either block sites for the students, or they can focus the students on different areas. We had many pieces of feedback saying that different features weren't very obvious to them, and they were having a hard time finding their way through the system. So the recent changes have been based on that feedback there. So we're trying to clean up the entire UI, make it really easy for people coming from other platforms as well to find all of our different features, because we have quite a few placed throughout highlights. So we're trying to make sure that when people get introduced to our platform, that it's quite intuitive, and then they can find what they're looking for. And on the back of what Nara was saying about the admin console, so it sort of grew organically over 10 years, and this left a lot of new features being hard, and different settings for our admins being quite hard to find. So part of that was cleaning up the user interface using new patterns that we see throughout all the systems that the different admins use as well, to try and keep consistency. So we incorporate feedback everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you, Logan. So how do these updates align with the company's overall mission and goals in the ed tech space?
Yeah, that's a great question, Heather. Like I alluded to earlier during the introduction, Hāpara's initial mission back in 2012 was making learning visible. It came from the John Hattie's research on visible learning, and that's still something that is an underpinning philosophy for us. And it's a theme that's resonated. For most teachers, they've said that as devices got introduced in the classroom, that lack of being able to see what they're working on or helping them when it's needed was one of the biggest challenges they faced in classrooms, particularly because if you think of a modern classroom, if the teacher's there, mostly what they see is the back of the laptop for the student. So they don't know if the student needs help, is off task, or is lost somewhere on the internet, and so on. And so making learning visible continues to resonate as a theme for us. We use that as the overall philosophy on how we do any development. And as other tech tools have evolved as well, we continue to focus on classroom management and interactions, because we believe that if we can manage to get smooth flow of classroom interactions, it will help actually enforce or help benefit with better learnings and so on. And overall, whatever we do in Hāpara, and we have certain core principles that it aligns to. And those are, we have like 5 guiding principles. It's about people, empowerment, social equity, transparency, and use of technology. So when we talk about people, we always consider education as a human endeavor. Now, even though we are a technology company, we don't believe that technology is the the ends. We just find it as a means to the end, being the human interactions between the teacher and the student. That is one of the richest interactions. I know from my own personal experience as a student, the difference that a teacher can make in a person's life. It is invaluable, and a teacher can truly impact students. I strongly believe it, and I feel really privileged to be in this part of my life, being able to somehow play my little part, though I'm not an educator, play my little part in this. So that's why people are super important for us, and that's what we look at it. We may be a technology company, but we look at people first. That's the most important thing. Now, empowerment means we want to be able to empower both the teachers and students in those classroom interactions. What does it mean for teachers to help teach? We build functionality into our tools which will allow teachers to share resources, create differentiated learning, to direct students to resources as needed, help redirect students who might get distracted, because we know we all get very distracted these days, including adults. So, things like that. It's all considered, and it's about empowering both one side, the teachers, as I said, but also the students. So for the student, when say they're getting redirected, the teacher these days has to, provides a reason why they're redirecting them, for example, and things like that. So we're always looking at what it is. And when we look at our student dashboard tool, for example, what we heard from students, we did a lot of research with students, and what we found is they found everything very busy. So we really stripped it down to its very basic element and said, we'll put certain things right, what you need in front of you, and take away all the other distractions in a single tool. So that helps empower students in their learning. When we come to social equity, it's about being able to provide access to information and learning for everyone. I talked about the foundational story from Manayakalani, where people from low socioeconomic background, or students, they didn't have access to the same resources as certain others. But once the devices were introduced in the classroom, suddenly they could access so much more information. And in some cases, it was the first time parents of some of these kids were actually using devices as well. So it had a large impact on the entire family, not just the student. And so when we talk about social equity, it's about being able to access information, but also then the equity part would be about meeting the student where they are, not having a standard template for the entire class. So we provide features like differentiation and forming groups to allow students to interact and so on. With transparency, it's about making learning visible. So, I've spoken about it a couple of times, so I won't talk much more about it. And lastly, the technology. Everything we do is about enabling effective teaching and learning. That's what we use technology for. We believe in technology for good. So that's our core driving philosophy as such.
Thanks, Nara. How do you ensure that updates remain intuitive for educators and students while adding new features?
That can be quite difficult sometimes, but so keeping our core principles in mind is definitely one of the main things that we have to consider, as well as we involve users throughout the entire design process. So that's from conception of what a different feature might be, or a new feature. That's generally derived from the feedback that we get, as well as every point of this feature development, we get user involvement on. So that can be from research calls. After we sort of frame up what this feature might be, then we get the different teachers possibly, or other educators involved in providing context around the difficulties that they're having, so we can make sure that we're building the right feature for them. then would do different levels of prototyping as well. So would come up with the initial idea of how that feature would work, and then would get you the teachers and different users to go through that prototype, and we'll start refining it up to a point where we're reasonably happy that the teachers and, well, sorry, I keep saying teachers, the audience will be able to use this different feature. And then from there, we will start with a rollout, and we won't initially just do what's called a big bang rollout where we just deliver it to everyone. We'll start testing it possibly with pilot customers, and we'll continuously get feedback and refine how that feature is presented and how it's used before everyone will get it. So that's a general idea on how we make sure that it remains intuitive. So.
Perfect, thank you. So this next part I'm excited to talk about, because you are going to introduce some things that some of our educators or audience may have never heard of yet that is going to be released. So can you walk us through the new features and what challenges you are solving with them?
Yep, I can take that. Yep. So I guess this is why most people might be tuning in, but first up, we have recurring sessions. So as I mentioned, the guide browsing a little bit earlier and be able to set up the different classroom flows, we've been working on allowing the teachers to recur those sessions. So what this will allow is, if the teachers have common workflows that they would generally schedule these different sessions for, now they can repeat them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for a few weeks at this stage. But that feature will be available on the ClassView page. So that's where we're putting all these enhancements on, which leads into the next feature there, which is the ClassView page. And this is a new page within Highlights where we're starting to bring together all of our different functionality, just so the teacher doesn't need to be jumping around on all these different tabs, and they can stay in one area and have everything that they need within that page. And that will be solving all the navigation issues and missing out all the different features that our platform offers. Another one is also the two-way chat, also a very highly requested feature. So that will allow all students, including the more reserved ones, to be able to communicate with the teachers during the class time. So maybe they don't want to call out in front of all their peers, or the teacher just wants to message, say, to not embarrass the student or point them out during class. So that allows the two-way communication. The next feature that we'll also be doing is share screens. So this will be allowing the teacher to present their screen to all the students within their class. And this is just to make sure all the students are focused on whatever the teacher's presenting, and the student can have it right in front of them as well. So those are the new features that are coming up.
Very exciting. And I'm very excited about all of them, but I know that there's one teacher in particular that has been waiting for share screen for a while, so I can't wait to share that. Thank you. Nara, how do you envision teachers interacting with the product now that these changes are live, and how does this impact students?
Yeah, that's actually, we're super excited about about the features we've been introducing. Logan mentioned the ClassView page. What you'll notice is we took a slightly different approach to it. Rather than replacing something that's there, we kept it adjacent to the existing functionality, but started refining this new ClassView page so that it gives people time to test it out. It gives us a chance to also refine it further, and then probably eventually replace the way we present things to teachers. So the idea here was not to interrupt them during the school year. We know that, the worst thing that can happen to a teacher is something gets dropped on and changed completely, and it interrupts the flow. So so coming back to what I said, in terms of these new features, we're super excited to see what people have been saying. The feedback's been very positive. Many teachers have already indicated to us they want class view to be their default page. That is coming. We just wait. There's some more changes coming in. Once we put all the changes in, we'll have a gradual way to convert it and make that your default page. And we're even considering giving you some of that personalization as such. So that's in terms of class view page. Close and block tabs also has got great feedback from what we're hearing. And the way these changes impact students is that, again, it comes back to giving the students, the teachers more time with the students, taking away the technology challenges and shifting so that any time we save for a teacher having to be staring at screens is time they can use for instruction. And that's what drives us. And what we're finding is with a couple of features like the close and block, reduces the amount of whack-a-mole they have to play with the students. And even class view page means that they're not having to grapple and keep jumping around all over the application. So they spend less time when they want to do something in the application. And upcoming features such as the recurring sessions and so on will allow them to again plan and set up things and then not worry about it. They know that it's going to happen in the background. And all of these, while making the teachers' classroom interactions more efficient, will have a direct impact on the students in that it's giving them more time, richer interaction time with the teachers. So that's how it is. And we're thinking of more such features coming through. So, improving summaries for classes, or for the browsing activity and so on. So there's more coming up in the space. So I would just say, please watch the space. And we plan to keep introducing changes gradually. Yep.
Logan, I have a two-part question for you. Can you share a bit about the product development process for these updates? And what are some of our key milestones?
Okay, so yeah, that is a bit of a tricky question, a twofold question. But for starters, on concept of for our development process, we work in agile format, so we work in sprints, and what that means is we try to iterate fast. So we build some features, we get feedback, we put it back into development, and then we make enhancements on those quite quickly. So how that also starts is we involve different aspects of design thinking in here as well. So and that is, those design thinking approaches change based on the features that we are developing and the project sizes. So we'll try to use those as much as possible. And just to give an idea on what design thinking is that there are 5 phases of it. The first phase is empathize. So we have to empathize with the target user of this feature. We'd like to define what the problem is that we're trying to solve. And then comes in the ideate stage, which is generally just making sure that we're coming up with the best idea to approach this different problem. And then there's the prototyping and testing. So the prototyping and testing is a constant loop on testing the different ideas. And then once we've refined that, then we'll start bringing it to the developers to then build into the system. So there's no one set of ways that we have approached all of these different features. For example, the admin console was quite a large project affecting many different areas. So that was a much longer process that we definitely used all of these different frameworks and techniques. And then you'll have smaller features which are highly requested and very specific that maybe we don't need to do so much of these different development processes. And also we have multiple teams that work on various different enhancements as well. So we don't just have one team working on one thing. We have a couple different teams working on multiple projects at the same time as well. So yeah, many different levels of engineers are involved to make sure that we're making the best solution for you guys.
Awesome, thank you. Nara, were there any unexpected challenges or pivots the team encountered while working on these updates?
Oh yeah, change is the only constant in life, right? So in terms of that, obviously we start everything with a plan, but then we are operating in an environment where we have to also respond to anything else that's happening in our environment. And in the technology environment, that sometimes means uh, changes from, say, the platforms we work on or the other systems that we integrate with. For example, if Google makes any changes, we have to respond to that. If one of our integration areas, like say Clever or ClassLink or anything like that, has a change, we have to respond to that as well. So, and quite often, just like, you know, product roadmaps by design are not very clearly visible. No one shares too much about what's happening when and so on. Some things are better communicated, like technology changes, but some things just get dropped because it's a sudden security or privacy concern and we have to adopt to it. So it's happened to us a fair bit as well. So we look at what's known for us and we plan around those known changes that are coming up, but then sometimes unknown changes come along as well, right? So we typically plan keeping some capacity aside for all these technology and ecosystem changes, and then on top of that, we lay how we want to make enhancements to our own platform. Last couple of years, though, as we got out of COVID and so on, we had a number of times where we had to kind of start, stop, start work, mostly to do with integration with third parties. For example, a couple of examples I can think of is Google had decided that, for example, third-party cookies should not be used. They're going to retire third-party cookies, so we started making a bunch of changes to do that. People were concerned. A number of vendors were concerned and said it's not going to allow everything to happen. While it's a good practice for looking at marketing and what's happening there for privacy, it has an impact when you create web applications. So that went on for a while, and in the end, after we made quite a lot of changes, which meant we had to pause some of our roadmap work to do this work, then Google changed its mind and said, okay, we have found a way to allow third-party cookies to continue, kind of. So it changes a little bit, and we have to keep adapting to it. Another example was Chrome extensions. It's a framework. So Chrome has been running on something called the Manifest version 2 framework for almost 10 years now. And Google's been trying to push for an updated framework, I guess, which is called the Manifest version 3. And that's another case where they've started it off a couple of years back. There was a deadline. We were scrambling to do it. We were in touch with Google as well. One good thing is we have a good partnership with Google. So we are able to reach out to their teams, have a chat with them. We told them about where we had challenges. So then we engaged with the Google Chrome development team. They were quite responsive to us because of a long partnership with Google. And so they started asking us specifically which areas we had problems with. We talked to them about the specific use cases, particularly around highlights, that was going to impact students and interactions in classroom. And good on them, they listened. Even though it was kind of late in the piece, they did listen in the end, and they deferred the project by a couple of years and then made some changes so that it supports all the interactions that are currently available in highlights. If they had not made those changes, some of highlights functionality would not have worked with the original plan for the Manifest version 3. But now they made the changes, and now we've continued to carry on and make those changes as well, because we do have a revised time frame, which is the middle of next year. So middle of 2025, all vendors have to move to the Manifest version 3, us included. That's examples. Then there are other integrations that change, like Clever and ClassLink, like I mentioned. That's an ongoing thing as we change, and we keep adapting to that. In addition to this, whenever there's a new version of the Chrome browser, for example, something could change. So we have to respond to that as well. We have programming languages that we use that keep getting updated. So, there are a number of things, and then security patches. So some of these we can plan because they announced it earlier, but some of them get dropped in, particularly security patches and browser changes. They happen on a regular basis, and we wouldn't know until it happened what the change may be in some cases. So this is where we plan something, but we suddenly get something unexpected, and we have to pivot a little bit and make some more changes for it. And the biggest pivot of all, actually, is 4 years now, but the biggest pivot of all was when COVID happened, and we had to completely change what we do and how we do it. But this is just a part of the software, the product development life cycle, and this is something we have got pretty I would like to say we got pretty good at and are able to cope with over the years.
Absolutely. It's seamless from the teacher side. So, Logan, what role does feedback from pilot users play in finalizing product updates?
Before I get to that question, I have to apologize to all our viewers. Nara and I are looking very beige today, so I apologize for wearing brown. But what role does feedback from pilot users play in?
By the way, I just have to say that's spoken like a true ex-designer, right?
Yeah.
Only a designer would pick up all this.
Once a designer, always a designer.
That's right.
So what role does feedback from pilot users play in finalizing our product? So we've got the pilot users are extremely crucial to finalizing our product. So this is a group of users that we can go to and basically go, hey, we've built this thing. Yes, we have had all the prototyping process and all that other design thinking stuff done beforehand, but this is it actually working, and we get to go to these pilot users and say, can you please play with this new feature and let us know any feedback. That gives us an opportunity to find out if we've missed specific functionality that hasn't popped up in any of the other tests or questionnaires or during the prototype phase as well. It could be even suggestions on how we can introduce this to other teachers, so we can see if they get confused finding this new feature or at any process while using it. As well as it gives us an opportunity to discover any bugs or anything that has gone through the QA process that we didn't expect. Because yes, we have a QA team, but that's nothing compared to thousands of users all using it in different ways. So things are bound to pop through, but luckily our QA team is very, very, well, they use a fine-tooth comb for sure. So, but yes, pilot customers can completely change direction of the way we approach these features as well. So, yeah,
Perfect.
they play a huge role.
So looking ahead, are there any additional features or updates on the roadmap that you can hint at?
Yeah. So this is the big challenge, right? Talking about stuff that we're working on without giving a specific time frame for it, which is, the hard part. But yeah, there's lots of exciting things. I already mentioned the two-way chat and sharing screens and so on. This has been one of the most requested features recently, and so we decided to get into it. But with most things, we don't want to just replicate functionality that's sitting out there. So we take a considered approach. We reach out, as Logan mentioned earlier, about our process. We try to empathize, understand what the pain points are, what are the checks and measures we need to put in, rather than just drop something in and see where it goes. We take a little longer because we want to consider this. We have a huge advantage in Hāpara that we have so many ex-educators on our team. They become our first point of call, and they keep the product team, honest. You give a bunch of technology people a problem, and they'll create a technical solution, right? So, but we want to make sure that it's relevant for the environment it's being used in. So we do that, then we use groups like focus groups and pilot customers and so on to further refine it. And that's where the two-way chat and so on is coming. And we take a gradual approach. We try to get some base functionality and make it available to teachers, because we believe that if you sit in the labs and you just design everything and just then ferment it for a long time and then release it out into the wild, we're going to get things wrong. So instead, we take the other, what we call the lean philosophy approach, where we build what's the base requirement, and we will give it to teachers and students and so on, and get them to start using it and then tell us how to refine it, rather than build everything out and then come back in the other way. So two-way chat is an example of that. Screen share is another, where we're going to be initially starting off by allowing teachers to share their screens with students. And then we'll refine it further to expand what else comes out of it with the interactions, and also to see whether we want to allow students to share their screens back to the teacher, who will in turn share it with the class and so on. Other than that, we are definitely looking at further refining the highlights user interface. I mentioned the Hāpara admin console. It's the direction we're going to take our user interface. You'll see the menu shift around a little bit, more space in the interface, and a cleaner UI, more consistency that's more aligned to Google's own design philosophy and so on. We, as we do that, and as the class view page becomes more central to how people are interacting with our tool, we plan to start retiring the browser tabs and current screens because that's now redundant functionality and so on. But we're not going to rush into anything. We're going to do it and pick up the feedback and keep iterating through it. Other areas we are looking at is how to retain student browsing history for longer. We know for the longest time, Hāpara, we have held back at storing that data because we don't want that to be, there is student privacy issues and so on, but we also don't want it to be used as a after the fact tool to try to address something because the context is taken away. When you store data, the context in which the data was stored is taken away, right? So you just see a bunch of data and make calls. So we're trying to see what we can do around storing some browsing data for a period that's relevant and hopefully has the context, but so that it does not breach too much of security and privacy concerns and so on. We want to start allowing teachers to also highlight seems to be an area where they use it is the most used part of our application or platform right now. It's similar to what we have in Workspace, where some teachers are creating workspaces and then sharing it with others. We want to introduce similar features and highlights, for example. So someone creates a nice little template on how they want to plan for their day. They could share it with another teacher to reuse for their instruction the next day and so on. We want to introduce more guidance into the tool. So when you close, right now we've limited it to 4 reasons. Why we did that is to optimize the quickness of the application, but we are getting more and more feedback that people want to be able to give custom reasons and so on. And we are looking at how to improve that aspect of the tool. And lastly, just overall, more guide browsing session improvements are coming along. I can't talk too much about the detail because we're ideating through it, but you will see more and more changes coming through in the classroom management piece.
Fantastic. It's going to be very exciting. Thank you. So how does the company approach data privacy and security, particularly with these new updates?
Yeah, so privacy and security is it's such an essential part of everything we do, and it's so integral to our whole development process. Fortunately for us, we have key people, including in our organization, who all of us take our responsibilities of privacy and security extremely seriously, particularly because you're dealing with students and young people. So Hāpara is compliant with various standards like the SIPA, the COPPA, and FERPA. We have signed up to those. Of these SIPA, I mean, it just shows the FERPA, for example, is Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. It was first enacted in '74, but it's still relevant today. And what it does is it protects things like student records and so on. While we don't store too much records in the system, it's probably only a little bit in Workspace if that's being used. We still have an obligation to maintain it properly. COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and that was enacted in 1998, and it focuses on privacy of younger children as such, people under the age of 13. But the most recent one is the SIPA, which is Children's Internet Protection Act. It came about in 2000, probably dated. They keep refining it because the world's changed so much in the last 24 years. But SIPA's aim is to protect children from harmful online content. And that's where tools such as highlights and partnering with the filtering tools and so on come into play to keep children safe. Right. In addition to that, so that's the safety and privacy security aspect of it. In addition to this, we make sure that we only collect the bare minimum information that's required to provide our service. So we try to avoid capturing and storing any privacy, personally identifiable information other than the bare minimum to show students' names and be able to interact with them in email. We do not take any other demographic information. It's not our place to do that. Then we take extreme care that any data that we store is encrypted both while it's in transit, so it's always encrypted, as you're interacting with the tool, but it's also encrypted when it's at rest. What we call at rest is when it's stored in our servers. It's stored in a database. It's encrypted. All our employees have to go through a mandatory security training and so on. And more recently, to further show how important security is for us, we've signed up to and are going through the current process of SOC 2 certification. Now, SOC 2 sounds like a weird acronym. What it means is, and it is a weird name, it says System and Organization Controls version 2, and it was put in place by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Strange that it's public accountant, but the whole thing is, it provides guidelines for organizations to manage and protect customer data. That is the key. Immaterial of the name of it, that is the key, and that's why we're going and trying to get it done. And it ensures that anything we store is secure and it's available and it's handled properly with integrity, confidentiality, and privacy in mind. So that's the things we do in the privacy and security space. It's in our it's in our DNA and our fabric. Everything we do has that layer built into it.
Wow, thank you so much. I learned a lot in that part too. Thank you. How are you helping current users transition smoothly to this new version? And Logan, I'll let you take that if you can.
Yeah. So it's a good question, because anytime we do make changes to the product, it can be confusing. Even little changes can throw people off. So it's a delicate balance of, to start, there's many different approaches that we can take and that we have taken, depending on the feature and depending on how big this release is. So we like to point out in different announcements or even some step-by-step guides for the teachers, on the teacher-facing application at least. And we try to make sure that these aren't too disruptive for users who might not want to use these different features, as well as we want them to know about it and know enough about it to come back and use this. So it can be, are we doing too much? Are we doing too little? That's why we use pilot, our pilot users as well. And then we can change these approaches as we go. So that is one method. We also have different support articles and internal training. So we get our internal teams, so professional learning teams, our engagement managers, and our support team across these new updates to make sure if any of our customers have questions, they can contact. We also have different support articles that have been written up on these new features, so that if you need help, then you can go to these different articles and have walkthroughs of these different changes. Some of them include video tutorials as well. So yeah, that's generally how we like to get everyone across to these new feature enhancements and new versions.
Perfect. So thank you. And speaking of the training resources, so the training resources or support channels available for teachers to learn the new features, where can they go?
Okay, so we have this little purple question mark in the bottom corner of our application. And within those, there are video tutorials, there's contact support, there's some training materials in there, there's links to our community, and our professional learning team, mainly you as well, Heather, control that community and provide all the different resources and answer any questions that come through there. So if you guys have any questions around was it best practices for the digital environment, or just want to know how to use the product in the best way possible, then the community is a great place to find that, and call on Heather.
Absolutely.
And our learning team. So.
Thank you. Yes, our community is reaching 10,000 educators from around the world. So it is a great place to reach out and connect with people. And like Logan said, in that learning hub, there are many places where you can take your own asynchronous learning through videos, support articles, or formative quizzes to learn how to use the product. So Thank you for bringing that up. I want to thank both of you for being available for us today. I know that there's a lot of people that really appreciate how in-depth you've gone through everything and how transparent you've been. So Nara and Logan, thank you very much. I don't see any questions in the chat, but please know that you can reach out to us at any time in the community or through our Hāpara website. We'd be happy to answer any other further questions. And are there any last minute comments or anything that I've missed that either of you can think of?
Well, firstly, thanks for inviting us, Heather. And the one thing I would say to the audience is please keep that feedback coming. And I know sometimes you might not see something change for a while. That's because we have a lot of stuff to do, but it's not being ignored. We look at everything like Logan mentioned. We look at everything and we then try to start looking at what trends are there, look at where it impacts, how many people it's impacting, and then try to prioritize what we need to do. And we do all this in the wider environment of, while we have to do improvements to the platform, we also have to make sure that the platform is working properly for everyone. And we take a considered approach. So feedback from users is one of the most valuable inputs we have, and we would always welcome it. So it's not being ignored. Please do keep sending it through. That's what's driven innovation for us in a long time. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a good day.
All right. Good day.